Today, we're going to be talking about American Assassin and Mother, so stay tuned.
Welcome to The Real Review.
Welcome to The Real Review, sponsored by Parametric and Lazy Ape Studios, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and perspectives in the world of film and television. I'm here with Matt, desperately seeking an iPhone X. Hey.
It's pronounced the iPhone 10, Joel.
Is it?
Yes.
I'm going to call it the iPhone X because it doesn't make any sense how they can go from an 8 to a 10 without a 9. Where's the 9 at, Matt?
Math.
That's just reasons. That's
Yes,
what they say.
Reasons.
Yeah.
Math.
I'm wondering if they're actually going to come in their next announcement, they're going to do, and we still have an iPhone 9 coming out, but then they'll do like X2.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. 11?
11, yeah. Which is a better
XS.
iteration. I don't know if you do video editing software, but the Final Cut, they did the same thing with Final Cut Pro. They went Final Cut Pro 7, and then they jumped to Final Cut Pro X, which was Final Cut Pro 10. But that was a horrible thing because nobody really liked Final Cut Pro 10.
Yeah, it's a math problem, I think.
Yeah, anyway, so who am I?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm here with Joel Mother Cunningham.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like it. Very fitting.
Yeah.
Because I went and saw Mother. And if my mom is listening, she's going to be like, what? What?
Why are they talking about me?
Yeah, there you go. So, hi, Mom. Thanks for listening.
Hi, Joel's mom.
There you go. So here on the podcast, Matt and I like to break things down in our very patented, we should actually get that trademark patent official way of doing so, which is, Matt, you're more of a, fan of the films.
Yeah.
More of the kind of along for the ride, the emotion and the awesomeness of the films. And I'm more of the structural breakdown, story development kind of guy that likes to kind of break things down.
Yeah.
And so we put those together and we give you what we consider a real thought and perspective and review of a film.
Yeah. That's exactly how it works.
Awesome. So at the get-go, why don't you give some of our listeners, well, all the listeners, not just some.
All of them.
All of those listeners, some beautiful ways that they can get connected to the podcast.
Listeners, hey, my name is Matt.
It's got very intimate.
Hey, exactly. So you can connect with us in a myriad of different ways. First one being on our website, realreviewmedia.com, and you can connect to all of our other social media outlets and channels and pages from there as well. But yeah, you can check out all the news stories there. Also social media, facebook.com/realreviewmedia. Instagram and Twitter at Real Review Media. That's real spelled REEL. And then also email us. Catch us on our email at realreviewmedia@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
And reach out to us. Let us know what you think and if there's any cool movies that you've seen lately and if you really liked Mother or not.
You're scaring me sometimes with that. I'm not going to lie. You know how jumpy I can be.
Every time I say Mother now, it's really fun to watch you and you're just like...
I'm going to knock over something when you do it. I'm going to hit your phone off the table.
Okay.
And you will need that iPhone X.
Yes, that's true. Give me an excuse to get one.
Yeah, so let's get into this. We're going to be talking about, as you mentioned, 2 films, which one you saw, the other I saw.
Yes.
Saw The Mother, and you saw...
We had to divide and conquer, and I saw American Assassin, yo.
Yes, so would you like to start us then?
Let's start this thing.
Talking about American Assassin.
Let's do this. American Assassin, synopsis, a story centered on counterterrorism agent Mitch Rapp. There's a lot more to it.
That really
That's
is.
all it is.
Wow.
IMDb is not really keen on the details for this one.
I just like his name, Mitch Rapp.
Yeah, so it's based off a book, or I guess a series of books. I learned this.
Okay.
And this guy goes through something really, really traumatic in the very beginning. It's actually in the trailer, so I'm not really spoiling anything. But goes through something really, really traumatic, and essentially just trains himself to take out terrorists at no matter what costs. I mean, he trains himself hardcore MMA, fighting, weapons training, all this stuff to basically go find all the people that basically ruined his life.
Yeah.
And to go take them out. And then what happens is,
So it starts off as a vengeance story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then CIA comes in, they come in and they kind of recruit him to kind of hone him in and be like, hey, you can't just go do this rogue, let's maybe hone your skills and, focus it a little bit more. But that's really the gist of it, kind of revengey. But kind of going into who's in it, it's Dylan O'Brien, Charlotte Vega, a number of people. Christopher Bomford, Michael Keaton, and Taylor Kitsch is in it as well. Directed by Michael Cuesta And
Very nice.
this movie's got like a 30-something% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
I came out liking it a lot more than I thought I would going into it. I don't know if I went in with like basement level expectations, but I found myself enjoying it a lot more than I thought.
That is it does with a lot of action films like this in particular. There tends to be a pretty wide margin between a lot of critic perspective and fan. And sure enough, it's at critic perspective 34 right now, fan perspective 72.
It's got like a B+ cinema score also, which is pretty cool. So I think let me just start off by saying this: Dylan O'Brien, haven't seen him a lot other than Maze Runner.
Yes.
And he's really good in this. Like, he's transitioning. I'd like to see him get some more serious stuff because he's transitioning from, well, Maze Runner had some good dramatic elements to it, but I feel like he's coming from that like teen, like I'm just the good looking guy, whatever, into doing more serious things. And this was a good glimpse of that. Yeah. I thought he was really, really good. Michael Keaton was my favorite character in this movie. Mm-hmm. I was talking to you beforehand off air earlier, and he does some late 80s, mid 80s, like Michael Keatonisms or early 90s Michael Keatonisms, where he's like kind of crazy, a little unhinged, he does stuff like that. There's one scene where he's talking with like his nemesis or former protege, and this again, it's in the trailer, Taylor Kitsch. Yeah. And there's one scene in particular where I was like, oh my gosh.
He's going full Keaton.
Yeah, he's full Keaton right now. Yeah. And it was awesome.
The best example of a Keaton moment that I could say, besides like all of Beetlejuice, because Beetlejuice is Michael Keaton, I think, for the most part, but the Batman film, which one? The second?
Returns.
Yeah, the second one. Mm-hmm. He has this scene where he's like in front of the fireplace and he like, the Joker, no, it's the first one.
Okay.
Because the Joker walks in and he smashes the thing and he's like, you want to get crazy? Let's get crazy. And I was like, that is so Michael Keaton.
That's exactly how he is.
Oh, really? That'd be great.
There's one scene in particular he does it a lot, and there's maybe a couple at the beginning where he kind of dances on that territory, but that one scene towards the end is kind of where it happens.
I'd probably enjoy that a lot.
Right. Yeah. I was like, ooh. But so he was really great. I really enjoyed that. How can I say, I guess I'll get into that in a minute, but the very first 15, 20, 25 minutes of the movie, I was really liking this movie. I was like, man, this movie is really good.
The first 15, 20 minutes where the horrible stuff happens to the guy.
Right, exactly. Well, the way that they do it is there's a big scene at the very beginning where the tragedy kind of unfolds, and it was shot really well. It was tense, visceral. I didn't realize going into it that it was going to be so violent. It's very violent. Okay.
This is an R-rated film.
Yeah. And I was just thinking they're not going to show a lot, but like people were getting shot, and you see the bullets like tearing through people, and I'm oh dang, and I was like, wow, this is intense, and I was like super locked in. I'm like, oh my gosh, and then this thing happens. I feel terrible for him. They make you care for his character almost immediately with this event.
It's like that save the cat moment, as they call it. Yeah.
And I was super locked in, and then it kind of, actually, no, it keeps going. I would say the first half of this movie, I was actually really, really locked into it. And I was really, really liking it. It's the second half that I felt like it kind of lost a sense of what it was. It may be really true to the book. I don't know, because I didn't read the book. But as for a movie's sake, it lost a sense of what made the first half so good.
Gotcha.
There's a series of like training montages and sequences where he's with Michael Keaton.
So let me ask, did they have like a Mr. Miyagi style training montage with like Michael Keaton?
No, because he wasn't that hands-on. But right. So there's like a training, like it's not really a montage, but a series of training scenes that were really cool, and I was really like that stuff. And then before they get to like the main mission, all that stuff was really, really awesome. Then the main mission kind of fell flat a little bit for me. But other than that, it was enjoyable. A lot of the action was pretty standard. But they did some things every now and then to kind of really switch it up and be like, okay, so they're not just two guys fighting on a boat. Some other stuff is happening to make it more interesting. So it's not just like two guys fighting on a boat,
Yeah.
And they did things like that. That was pretty cool. I'm pretty sure at one point in time, there's a scene where Dylan O'Brien's character breaks a guy's arm, compound fracture, bone sticks out of his arm, and he stabs the dude in the neck with it.
That's pretty awesome.
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I've never seen that in a movie before.
Yeah. So I don't want to interrupt your flow, but we had mentioned in our prior Coming Soon a comparison to Born Identity.
Yeah.
How closely do you feel like the action and sort of
The
the
action
way
was
that
pretty good. I thought the action was good.
Similar style-wise, though. Do you feel like it fit more Born Identity or more like a John Wick?
No, not John Wick.
Okay.
More Born Identity. Pretty fast-paced.
Shaky cam.
Yeah, a little bit shaky cam. Not overdone on that, but it wasn't like John Wick where it was a one take following him doing all these choreographed things, and
it's like a dance.
Right. This was closer to the Bourne side of things, not from a story standpoint, but as far as the action is concerned. But I enjoyed it. So I think the biggest thing with the negatives was just towards the end. I felt like it was like doing really good at being this really smaller scale story, one guy against a couple of bad guys. And then at the end, it was like, okay, now possibly thousands of people are going to die. And I was like, you're losing it a little bit, guys. Okay. And then there's one character in particular, like the main girl, something happens to her and you're like, this wasn't earned at all. And it just didn't make any sense. I was like, that's an interesting story choice. I don't understand why that has any significance.
Yeah.
But
they attempt to raise the stakes is what it sounds like, but they just didn't really need to.
It felt like they were like, oh guys, this is the final act. We need to up the ante.
Out.
Exactly. Yeah. And they were hinting at it though in the first two acts. So I can't really blame them for eventually going there because they were hinting at it. But it would have just served the story better if it was more like, hey, let's just make it about him chasing this one other dude or him chasing this group of guys or something like that, as opposed to, hey, let's, it wasn't saving the world's sakes, but hey, let's make him save the world. That's kind of what made it stumble at the end for me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, you know what they say, in the last 15 minutes, you can't hold anything back.
Yeah, man. The beginning, though, was crazy. It was a pretty crazy opener.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I was making a joke. That was a reference to, I believe, Major League Baseball, the movie. So.
Oh, Major League.
Yeah, Major League. There you go.
Yeah.
Major League Baseball.
Wild thing.
So. Yeah. So, any other thoughts then?
No, that was it. Better. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. It wasn't a great movie.
Would you like to see a sequel made? An ongoing story with these characters and this world?
Only if they just keep it like real small scale.
Okay.
Like a John Wick, where it's like just him against like one main bad dude or something like that,
Gotcha.
So I think that would be cool to see.
I get that. I mean, that's one of the things that I've liked more so often about the new iteration of the, Daniel Craig, James Bond films, is that they tend to keep it a little bit more of a small scale.
Right.
There's large world impacting implications, but it's generally about sort of one or two people. It's when they branched into like Quantum of Solace, all the power things and the giant, like with the most recent iteration, when it goes to this like world hacking type thing, that's when it gets lost for me.
Yeah.
To keep it about the main thing and just stick it with these main characters, and then it'll keep connected and interested. But on the other side of that, Mission Impossible, they tend to go very big with their scopes, and they do it well. Maybe if you kind of start in that direction and you keep going, then it can work.
Yeah.
But if you start small and you go too broad with it, it can fall flat.
Yeah, I think there's probably clever ways to write that in to do it correctly, to where it's not going to seem like, what is this? Like this is so out of left field.
Gotcha.
But overall, if I were to rate it based on the first half of the movie, it'd be almost a letter grade higher. But right now, I'm going to give it a 76%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not a bad movie. It's not a great movie, but it's somewhere in the middle. I was like, that was all right. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like a 90s action movie. A little
I like
bit.
that.
Yeah.
So it's more of a character-driven action film.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I haven't seen a good one of those in a while, at least with this kind of a style.
Right.
I mean, since the Bourne ones.
It took itself a little bit too seriously to be full on 90s action, but it was still
We
pretty.
have John Wick that came out most recently, and then Bourne, and then you've got a few mixed ones kind of in there. And Baby Driver's kind of like a character-driven action film.
Right. That's a lot more style.
A lot more style,
yeah,
than it is in action. But it is at the same time. So.
No, I got you. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, so the moral of the story here, though, is, right? If you train hard enough...
Don't put Twinkies on your pizza.
And don't put Twinkies on your pizza. If you train hard enough and you kill enough people, then you too can work for the government.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
moral of the story, right, Matt?
Yep, exactly.
Nice.
Don't do that.
Well, I'm halfway there. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
Just kidding.
What did you get a chance to see, Joel?
So I feel like this is, before I get into this, I feel like we're a bit at this is unfairness levels now of the movies that I'm going to see versus the movies that you're going to see, because I'm constantly choosing the films that are just like purposefully I know I'm not going to like, or just getting horrible critical
I didn't
reviews.
pressure you into this at all.
I
Joel.
know, but I'm doing it for the podcast, so I hope our listeners out there respect that and appreciate it. So I went and saw Mother. Yes, a film that was more recently released into theaters in the funny thing about this, I'll say this before even getting into it, I'm actually really surprised that this was a large release. I'm really surprised that they didn't do a limited release for this film, because it is definitely a type of film that is for only certain types of audiences.
Yeah, it's for like 16 people to enjoy.
Pretty much,
Okay.
yeah, according to what we're reading and seeing from all the reviews and more so critics and everything like that. So I'll read the synopsis for this. A couple's relationship is tested when uninvited guests arrive at their home, disrupting their tranquil existence. Its director is Darren Aronofsky. It stars a few different folks. The most major name there, as far as like main characters, are Jennifer Lawrence and
J.
Javier
Law.
Bardem.
Yep.
They're both named just Mother and Him. So Jennifer Lawrence is Mother. Javier Bardem is just him, which already tells you a little bit of what kind of story this is going to be.
Wow.
Yeah, Ed Harris is man. Michelle Pfeiffer is woman. Woman.
Okay.
And then you've got younger brother and oldest son, which is Brian Gleason and Domhnall Gleason, which
yeah.
I'm guessing they're brothers in real life, which was kind of cool.
I
thought
didn't know
was
that.
pretty neat.
Yeah.
I didn't
General
thi-
Hux.
Yeah, I didn't know if Brian was an actor or not, but they both have the same last name and they're playing brothers in the film, so I kind of figured maybe they just sort of mix them up in there.
Alright.
So those are, I would say, the biggest names, the biggest recognizable names, except for, what's her name? Kim, God, I can't think of her, from Bridesmaids. Saturday Night Live, Ghostbusters. Kristen Stewart. Kristen
Wiig.
Wiig. Kristen Wiig, yes.
Stewart.
Why am I Kristen? Yeah, way off your base here.
Yeah.
Kristen Wiig was in it. She made like a weird kind of role cameo, a very non-important but somewhat interesting role at the same time.
Okay.
I actually liked her character probably more than anybody, but she's only in it for a very, very, very small chunk of it. So here's what I will say in a sense, the one thing that I really appreciate about this film is that it took chances. And boy, did it take chances. I mean, it really was like,
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to try some stuff here. And Darren Aronofsky is that kind of a director.
Yeah.
You know, he's a visionary in a sense. He's an auteur in a sense. He's going to get in there and he's going to make deep, symbolic, allegorical, metaphysical, crazy, off-the-wall type film experiences for people to watch. And a lot of times, I think he puts things in films that you're just not meant to understand or
Right.
really not meant to get. And maybe that's an on-purpose thing. Maybe it's not. Maybe he's like, well, if you're smart enough, you'll figure it out. Maybe he just doesn't care. This film was very much a heavy, strong sort of metaphor and allegory of a couple different things. And
Is this spoiling stuff at all?
I feel like I need to say some stuff in order for people to understand the film, because one of the big critical critiques, one of the big things that I'm hearing from a lot of people, a lot of the negative things that I'm hearing from people is that you really don't get the film, you don't understand the film unless you understand the allegory.
Here's a problem. It's being marketed as a horror thriller.
Right. And
Right.
it is horrific, for
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's a thriller because it's very clear, especially once you understand where the allegory is coming from and where it's going.
So we throw
Then you're
a
going to
little
know where it's going in the film.
spoiler alert then.
Yeah, a little spoiler alert.
Spoiler
So,
alert, guys. If you want to see Mother, shut it off.
yeah, if you don't want to hear anything that's going to spoil any of the crazy aspects of Mother, yes,
Okay.
go ahead. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Spoilers.
Yeah. So the film functions as a high-level allegory of the biblical story of man.
Okay.
It's a good way of putting it. It's man, Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, God, Mother Nature, and it's man's one of the allegories. There's a couple, I think.
So like him's God, mother's earth or something like that.
And then man
like,
is Adam and
Eve.
Adam and
Okay.
Eve. Michelle
Yeah.
Pfeiffer is Eve,
Yeah.
and then their two sons. And again, as soon as if you're familiar at all with the biblical story of, especially the Old Testament, and a little bit in the New Testament, then you're going to know exactly where certain beats are going to happen in certain
Right.
ways at certain times. But without that knowledge, the film is a jumbled mess of confused, like, what is going on?
Right.
So a couple different things that I just really didn't like. One, it's shot very darkly. It was a very darkly lit film. I don't know if they tried to use a lot of practical lighting for some reason, but there was actually times where I found myself almost kind of squinting at and I go to the same theater, and they generally do very good. So I don't think it was the theater.
No, it looked like that when in the trailer.
Yeah,
so,
but it's very darkly lit at times. It's very hard to see kind of what was happening, what was going on. Two, they used throughout the course of the entire film a Steadicam setup that was very heavily focused on one actor in particular, Jennifer Lawrence. But it's this Steadicam thing, and it's constantly just right close up on her face and like maybe bounce halfway to like a mid shot, like a close mid shot.
Right.
So it's just following her like the entire time. And that got really stale and really boring and a bit jarring at times. And that kind of ties into the other issue that I had with the film, which is that I felt like Jennifer Lawrence really did not do a very great job in the film. Huh. Yeah. I think she was reaching for it, and she was definitely trying to be there. But I think that there was probably another actress out there that could have just innately embodied this type of a suffering, in pain character. With her, it always kind of felt like she was reaching for that sense of sadness, reaching for that sense of, despair and mourning and grief and anger. And I don't know, there's just something about the way that she was doing it. It came across as like once removed, it felt like everything was processing. Like, I need to act this way, so here I am acting this way.
Maybe she just did a lot of research, and Earth acts that way.
Maybe. I don't know. And I thought about that too, because I thought about, the allegory that's there. That's one allegory. I'll talk slightly about another little allegory that I think was there. But I thought that maybe she was trying to impersonate something that was Earth, Mother Nature-like.
Okay.
Like motherly, but I really didn't see that, because I can't say that, like, when I think of mother, that implies a certain personality type.
Right.
There are attitudes and attributes that you could give to a mother, that she cares about children,
sure.
that, usually she's busy and she's running around like a maniac. Like, there's things that you could say that a mother kind of has, but a mother could be any different number of ways.
Yeah.
So I really just didn't feel like she did a great job with that. I thought Javier Bardem did an amazing job.
He's good in almost everything he does.
Yeah, he was believable to the point where it was a bit eerie at times.
Oh, no.
Because the second allegory that I felt like was such a part of this film that was kind of wrapped up into the film is an allegory on either the creative process that an artist will go through in trying to bring something to life and share that with an audience and get their blessing and their encouragement and liking that.
Right.
That, or a director in and of themselves, a director of a film, because there is a tension that kind of exists in the film with Javier Bardem's character, where he plays this kind of narcissistic, at times obtuse, to the point where it causes horrible disaster for Jennifer Lawrence's character. And if you go with the allegory of it just being God and Mother Nature, that doesn't really make sense, because at least according to the biblical understanding of God and Mother Nature, God created Earth, but then he put man on Earth to have rule and dominion over it.
Right.
So it wouldn't really make sense that God kind of has this relationship with Mother Nature still. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at what he did with Noah, I mean, it's kind of his own artistic expression and interpretation of
and
whatever.
you could definitely say that, I mean, God still has, in a sense, control over nature in the biblical understanding of it, that God is, in control of the universe, and he controls all the aspects of Mother Nature, or nature in of itself. But there's some aspects of it too, like, I don't want to spoil too much, but there's like, there's a pregnancy that occurs because of Javier Bardem's character, because of him.
Yeah.
God wouldn't, like, I mean, I don't know. So
okay, no, that's fine.
That ties into other, and so
yeah.
The other big issue that I had with the film, I'm really trying to not spoil things for you, Matt, because I know you want to see this film.
Was it a sequel for The Hunger Games?
Not at all.
Okay.
No. Well, oh geez, wow. I'll tell you something later.
Yeah.
There's a Hunger Games-esque scene that takes place very close to the last quarter of the film, and it's one of the moments that's supposed to make you just go like, "What?" Like,
like killer monkeys.
Killer stuff, just really crazy killer people with killer things that do things with other things that they've killed. That's just like ridiculously over the top.
Things.
Yeah. So the film is split up into kind of, I would say, two acts. The first act is sort of the buildup of the tension, and that is also something that it did really well.
Okay.
It very effectively built a tension, and you could kind of feel getting closer and closer to something breaking. And so I did feel that, and I think it was successful in that merit. It set a atmosphere, some very freaky kind of visuals start to pop up and some very grotesque things start to kind of break through at key moments. And so that was effective to me. And I think if that had been less connected to the allegories, then it would have been more interesting. But because it was like so blunt force, this is the biblical story, then it made it feel like it was just a little too obvious. And so everything ended up, again, a lot of it having to do with Jennifer Lawrence, but a lot of it ended up feeling more like a stage play.
Right.
More as like a series of individual moments and acts that they were kind of progressing their way to, that they had to like check off in order to get this emotion through to you or this feeling through to you, instead of like, let's just tell this story and have the characters, because none of the characters act normally.
Okay.
None of the characters really have a realistic identity or a realistic way of portraying themselves. They all start off slightly irregular and then they just go, balls out,
really
completely irregular. So the first half is kind of like the setup, and then the second half is just everything breaks loose in the complete insanity and very crazy imagery, very disturbing moments, very like grotesque, awful things happening to Jennifer Lawrence and to other people. And it's kind of like the fallout of the beginning stuff. And so I weirdly feel like it's almost, like I said, it's almost like a stage play. And I left the film visually and emotionally impacted because of the things that I had visually seen portrayed, but not with a sense of having like learned anything or understood anything better. It really came across as like Darren Aronofsky's interpretation of what mankind has been, and look at how I'm going to show you this very obvious allegory of how humanity acts. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. And I think what's interesting about this movie is it's very flip-flopped from American Assassin.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is the critics, it's not like super positively reviewed. However, it is fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. The critics generally like it.
Yeah.
Audience members not.
Yeah.
It's flip-flopped. So what I can attribute to that is that element of it being basically the general movie-going audience being lied to in the marketing campaign, saying this is supposed to be super scary.
Yeah.
There was a marketing before I saw it. It says, "You will remember in 2017 the first time that you saw Mother. You will remember where you were on this day." Like I was like, what?
I think they're really trying to build up that last half.
Okay.
Like I talked about that craziness that happens. Because the last half is very impactful, and you will leave. I mean, unless you're asleep during it, you're really going to have something that it just like hits you in a way.
So here's the thing. After every single Aronofsky movie, maybe with the exception of Noah, I felt like I just feel depressed afterwards. Is that same trend still happening? Actually, I take that back. I did feel that way after Noah too.
Yeah. Here's what I would say. I think some people would see this film that very much agree with the allegory and the message of it.
Sure.
And come out feeling somber, depressed, probably like from it. And others might just even see the imagery and come out very much feeling somber and depressed. But to me, because it was so blunt about things and so obvious, it felt more like a misstep. So I didn't emotionally connect to the film in the way that it wanted me to.
Did it seem more like a political campaign or social campaign commentary on, like, was it more of like, hey, this is what I think of how terrible people are?
That's the weird thing. It wasn't like he was trying to make necessarily like a judgment call, because there wasn't like some moral message at the very end that kind of
like recycle.
Yeah. And again, that this kind of ties into the whole idea that this is also, there's potentially an allegory there of him as a creator, as him as a director and an artist, because the way that it kind of like everything ties up at the end, it makes it seem like, well, this is an ongoing, never-ending process that continues on, that it's not like, Earth is headed towards this giant cataclysmic Armageddon apocalypse and it's all our faults.
Yeah.
It was more of like, this is just the state of humanity, and then here's some aspects of my life that I think really are crazy because of the creative process, and that just kind of is how it is.
Right.
So I think if maybe there had been like a soapbox moment in a sense, or like I hate to use this reference, but Schindler's List, like a red dress moment.
Okay.
Then like the little girl in the red dress.
Mm-hmm.
If there had been a moment like that where you really get the weight and the heaviness of the depravity of humanity or something,
Yeah.
you would have left it feeling more somber and more sad. But it really just came across to me like one guy telling a story about how he thinks humanity looks at times. So yeah, and no.
The lens of Darren Aronofsky.
I would say yes, some people are going to leave it feeling depressed and upset. I didn't. I felt more just like,
I would probably leave like that.
Yeah.
I'm emotionally impacted by little things that
and there's one
laugh
scene in
at me for.
particular that I would warn people. I mean,
okay.
it's crazy. I mean,
okay. You don't have to explain it.
Right.
But
It's just it's for certain people.
it's rated R for a reason,
right,
folks.
For certain people, it will probably leave them feeling like, yeah. Now for me, it was like I saw it coming a mile away. I kind of expected it because of, again, the allegory elements of it.
Right.
So I knew where it was going. So it wasn't as impactful, but it was still visually kind of like,
yeah.
So I think that's a good summarization of my overall thoughts of the film.
Gotcha.
I'm going to give this one, I thought a lot about it, but I'm going to give it a D+.
Okay.
It's 69.
Gotcha.
I think if overall minor thoughts on like some ways that it would have been better for me. One, immediately kind of flip out Jennifer Lawrence. She was just too recognizable to me from like X-Men.
I really think there's some J-Law fatigue happening in the world today.
Yeah, I've kind of felt that already, but this was a huge aspect, or huge part of that.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, huge step towards that direction. Now I'm like, I don't need to see her again in anything for a while. So I think if they had immediately replaced her, I think if they had used slightly brighter visuals, a slightly more story type progression to the actual plot, instead of just trying to make the allegory so obtusely and obviously in your face, then it would have been a lot more interesting. But at the end of the day, and I'll say that I said this at the beginning, or maybe I didn't say it clearly enough, but I will applaud, in a sense, Hollywood willing to take a chance on a film that for sure does not fit the general mold of what we would expect from a major release from
Paramount. So Paramount Studios actually released a statement as being like, hey, you know what? Because they got a lot of negative feedback from just
you
the
wouldn't
general
expect
populace.
this from a Paramount.
So Paramount goes, you know what? We took a chance. We did something bold. We knew not everybody was going to like this thing. Yeah. We're basically doing what, everybody's clamoring for original movies, and Netflix, they get praise all the time for releasing original content. This is kind of our version of that.
Yeah.
That's what they said. The way that it was said, though, it made it seem a little bit more like they're defensive, like super defensive.
Right, they're trying to defend because they've gotten a lot of negative.
Right.
Feedback.
Mainly just from general populations, but whatever.
Yeah.
So interesting.
So I applaud them in that regard. I felt like there was one other thing I was going to say, but my mind just went blank totally.
Hunger Games.
Probably not Hunger Games.
Okay.
X-Men,
X-Men.
no.
Days of Future Past.
Doesn't have anything to do with any of that. No.
No. Okay.
Yeah. Oh well. It had something to do with Paramount and the fact that they were releasing films that were so crazy.
Michael Bay.
I can't even think about it. No, you're making it worse, Matt.
Okay.
I wish there was like a button that you could push where you could just rewind your mind for like 10 seconds, and it would just like pop back into your head.
Do you remember the Omega-13?
Is that a pill?
No, it's Galaxy Quest, bro.
Oh.
Yeah. Activate the Omega-13 and then go back in time 13 seconds.
I do remember that. Yeah. That's a good reference point.
It's a classic movie.
There you go.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll think of it. I'll share it in our next podcast or something like that.
There it is.
Does that sound good?
Do it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, then that is going to go ahead and wrap things up on the podcast. We're going to go ahead and give you some good ways to get connected here at the end. Again, as a reminder, so we have realreviewmedia.com. We'd love to connect with you there. And then additionally, we have our Facebook, which is facebook.com/realreviewmedia. We also have our Instagram and our Twitter, which are both at realreviewmedia. And you can definitely email us. Let us know your thoughts. I would love to hear any thoughts or perspectives. Oh, that's what it is. I remember what it was.
Okay.
We'll talk about it in the next podcast.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your perspectives on this film, Mother. Yeah, and maybe American Assassin, if you want to throw some thoughts that way too.
American Assassin's better.
I don't know if you want them Yeah.
No,
was
it's all
better.
good. That's
yeah, it's
it.
a bit different. You owe me a bad film, Matt. That's what I'm
Hey,
saying.
you know what? You
Yeah.
chose Mother. You said you were going to go see American
But
Assassin.
I did it for a good cause.
And then you were like, you know what? There's so much controversy around this movie. I should go see it.
It's
so I
not
can
about
talk
what
about it."
happened, Matt. It's about.
And then you saw it, and you're like, I saw
it's
Mother.
about you wanting to want to see the bad movies. You don't have to see them, but you have to want to see the bad movies.
I want to see
There
them.
you go. So email us. We'd love to hear from you. realreviewmedia@gmail.com. So anything else, Matt?
No, Joel.
All right. Well, Mother,
Mother.
it's been real.
It's been real.